Welcome everyone. This is the MyCS PhD information session, and we're in the session that will hopefully answer the question for you, should I get a PhD? So I'd like to welcome everyone to our session. I'm really looking forward to our next hour of answering questions that you all might have. So just so you know where you've landed, we are going to answer questions that you have about getting a PhD in computer science so that everyone here can make informed decisions about getting a PhD. As we've been advising students and working with students, we've noticed that it's really hard to find reliable information about this online. There's a lot out there on the web, but a lot of it is either not specific enough because it deals with graduate school very generally and thinks about other disciplines that might be really different from computer science, or thinks about master's programs as well as PhD programs. Or there's information that's way too specific about one specific school or program. And also a lot of information is out of date or wrong. And so we would like to try to help you find information that is useful for you. And a lot of research shows that information from professors and grad students specifically can help you make the best decisions. So that's what this session is all about. The way that we will run this session and our next hour together is using Slido. And so you can already navigate to our event on Slido. You can see the top 10 questions that have been submitted so far. You can look for any questions that you may have submitted. If you find it, you can vote it up. If you haven't found it, then you can ask it. And we will try to get through as many questions as possible. We'll answer them in order of popularity, but I may also do some balancing so we get a nice broad range of questions too. We have a wonderful panel here, and we'll hear from each member of the panel as well. So we'll start with introductions, and in part of our introductions, we'll share with you where we are and how we chose to get a PhD. So I'll start, and I'll ask for my fellow panelists to just go in order on the slide, please. So my name is Mia Minnis. I'm a professor at UC San Diego, and my undergraduate degree was in Canada. I studied engineering and philosophy at Queen's University, and then I chose to get a PhD in math, actually, with computer science as well, at Cornell University. And the reason I chose to get a PhD was that I found myself at the end of my engineering degree always asking why. Why is this true? How do we know? And I felt like there was a lot that I wanted to synthesize and to explore further that I hadn't yet had an opportunity in my undergraduate degree. And so I wanted to research further, and the PhD was a perfect fit for that. So my research area originally in my PhD was in mathematical logic and theoretical computer science. I thought about the limits of computation, what computers cannot do. And in the years since my PhD, I've expanded my research focus to also include computer science education research. All right. That's me. Tony, over to you, please.
Well, thanks, Mia. I actually have my undergraduate degree in mathematics, and I graduated a long time ago. I'm the age of most of the senior professors in this field at this point, from the University of Chicago with a degree in mathematics. They didn't even have a computer science undergraduate degree at the time. I decided not to do my PhD at that time. I'd applied and was admitted to Chicago back in 1987, but I didn't think that I really wanted to be in school for a while. I wanted to go out and try some things. So what I tried was I tried working for a professor. I worked for David Sheraton at Stanford University for a couple of years. And that was actually a lot of fun. And in hindsight, it was the right thing to do. I learned a lot from it. But my plan had always been to go back and get a PhD because I do like research. Chicago is well known for turning out future grad students. And life just sort of took over from there. I worked for Stanford for a couple of years, then I did a couple of startups, and then I did consulting for almost actually more than 2 decades. And in like eight years ago, actually, I applied for the PhD program. I was living here in Vancouver. I wanted to work with Andy Warfield at UBC. I applied. I wasn't accepted, and largely it was timing. He decided to take a leave of absence and start a company. But that sort of set me back and said, okay, well, if I really want to do this, I have to get serious about it. So I applied to the Georgia Tech Online Master's Program because I hadn't been in school for 25 years, and somebody looking at my app might go, you don't have anything very current in academia. So I did the online master's program. I'm actually still working with the online master's program, even though I graduated from it 4 years ago. And I reapplied to UBC. I started working with Andy before I started the PhD there. I started the PhD, he left, and then for about 2 years, I drifted around trying to figure out what I was going to do. And now I work with Margot Seltzer, who joined UBC 2 years ago, actually, and Ada Gavriluska, who's actually at Georgia Tech. My research area is in looking for more effective ways of managing and visualizing unstructured information. I have years and years of experience in doing systems level work in storage, mostly large, upper level storage, file systems primarily. So I think the reason for me to go back and get a PhD at a much later point that most people considering it are looking at is it provided me with an opportunity to explore ideas that I could look at and say, these are not going to get any traction in an industrial setting. The benefit of having a lot of industry experience is I know how to do time management. I know how to develop software. I know how to fix bugs, how to debug things. So I'm pretty self-reliant that way. The primary benefit here is that it provides me with an opportunity to explore crazy ideas that you just are not going to be able to explore in an industrial setting. And I'll pass it off to Samira.
Hello, everyone. I'm Samira Khan. I'm a professor at University of Virginia, and I'm also currently visiting Google as a research faculty. I guess my answer on why I decided to get a PhD would be kind of not that inspiring, maybe. So I actually didn't know what is research and what does it entail to get a PhD. So I was living in Bangladesh, and there is a strong precedent of students graduating from my undergrad school to go abroad and get higher education. My own sister, she was already getting a PhD at US, and I just went with the flow. So I really didn't know if I am good at research. Particularly, I found out that I was pretty good at research. I have a very researchy and curious mind, but I did not know at the time. So the conclusion or takeaway from my story, maybe it's okay if you exactly don't know what you want. You just need to try and figure out what matches your interest. So that would be all from my side.
Hi, I guess I'm next. I'm Max. I'm a PhD student at UCSD. In my third year, I study theoretical computer science, things about kind of learning, underpinnings of machine learning, learning distributions, and also combinatorics. I did my undergrad in math at Harvard. So I guess there was a CS degree at Harvard at the point that I was there. So there was that choice, but you can still kind of go from not a CS degree to a CS PhD program if you are in that position. Right, why did I decide to do a PhD? I also maybe have somewhat of a less interesting story. I think that being interested in my work and being able to kind of follow my intellectual curiosity and solve problems that either, I come up with or that I'm very interested in is really important to me. And I think that's, maybe you can do this in industry, but it's, I think, fairly dangerous. I think it's fairly hard to find an industry position where you can do this. But it's almost the main point of a PhD, is that, at least to me, is that you can do this. And so I've been very happy working on, all the things that interest me. That's about it.
All right, thanks, Max. I'm Leo Porter. I'm a professor at UC San Diego. I got my undergraduate degree at the University of San Diego in computer science, and then I came to UCSD to where I got my PhD and master's in computer architecture, where I worked on using hardware to perform something called thread level speculation, which is essentially trying to jump ahead in code and execute that ahead of time. Presently, though, I study computing education, where I'm focused on effective pedagogies, assessment, and educational data mining. For the question, why did I get a PhD? Well, there are a couple of reasons. And the first was that I had some inkling that I really enjoyed kind of solving hard problems. I remember this kind of vivid moment when I was an undergrad with my undergraduate advisor, John Glick, at USD, where I was trying to solve these algorithms problems on the whiteboard, and he was kind of giving me hints, and I spent his whole office hours there just solving all these questions out of the textbook, and just loving every minute of it, and knowing I wanted to kind of do that for the rest of my life. And then the second thing was that I really enjoyed teaching, and I knew I kind of wanted to teach at a college level, and I wanted teaching to be central to my job. In order to teach at a college level, you generally need a PhD if you want to be a professor. So those things combined for my going to a PhD program. Like some of the others speaking, I didn't know if I'd be good at research. And in fact, I started in a different area than computer architecture, was struggling a bit, took some really good classes from Dean Tolson, who was the former chair here at UCSD, and just fell in love with architecture and moved into that area. So it's okay to not know if research is what you want to do when you start this. I'll turn it over to next person.
Thank you, Leo. So hello, everyone. I'm Theo. I'm a second-year PhD student at UC San Diego. My research is mainly about operating systems, the intersection of operating systems and persistent memory. And I'm really keen of research on software and hardware interaction as well. And I plan to do something about that in the future. So how did I decide to get a PhD? So first of all, I got my bachelor's and master's at University of Athens, Greece. So when I finished my bachelor's, truth to be told, I didn't even know what research is. There weren't actually so many informative sessions like this one. So I didn't know, and I always thought that until that point that, a PhD student is just someone that is really passionate about computer science, someone that only loves this and doesn't have a work-life balance. So the thing is that just before I finished my bachelor's, I got a job that I really thought that this was something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life, which was I was working as an embedded software engineer. And so the thing is that I figured that I didn't like that much. I found it very repetitive, and I saw that, it's not challenging at all. So I decided to pursue a master's and just see how this goes. And I, started getting some experience on research. I was reading papers, and I was seeing how, research is done. So I saw that this was something that I was really interested about. And this also helped me solve some of the questions that I have. So some of the questions that I have about how something is get done, or why something is working like that. So yeah, I decided to just apply for a PhD program, and here I am now.
Hi, I'm Tanvir, fourth-year PhD student from University of Michigan. I work in the intersection of compiler, computer architecture, and operating system. So the main reason I wanted to do research or do a PhD was because of some of the problems that we studied in my undergrad. My undergrad is also in computer science, and we studied also like one of the core courses that we had to take for that undergrad course was computer architecture, operating system, and compiler. And while taking those courses, there were lots of problems, lots of, for example, in compiler, we had to learn a lot of things about optimizations. Like for optimizations, the optimizations that we taught, many of them are actually proposed by someone like Monica Lam, or in the computer architecture, many of them are actually proposed by someone like David Patterson or John Hennessy. So those ideas, like those problem solving, those things really stand out. And when we were taught those ideas, I always wanted to ask is that why this way? Why not the other way? So I think to answer this question, only way I can answer this question is actually doing research. And that's why I wanted to do a PhD. And I believe I have been able to do something like that. So, and I'm looking forward to doing more things regarding that.
Wonderful, thank you. And I also want to acknowledge TJ Smith, who is helping us out in the background, moderating the questions. So thank you for your contributions as well. And I am keen to hear from each of the panelists so that we hear all of these amazing voices. Thank you for sharing your journey so far. And now let's answer some questions. So bear with me while I switch to our Slido presentation, please. So let's start with the top question, which is, how can I tell if getting a PhD is a good choice for me? And before I open it up to any of the panelists who want to answer, let me just ask for the panelists, since we're trying to get through as many questions as possible, if someone has answered a question and your answer would be, yes, me too, I ask for you to just do a thumbs up or use one of the wonderful Zoom reactions, but let's try to keep our questions, our question replies brief so we can answer more questions. So who would like to start us off with this first question?
I can start.
Thank you.
Okay. So how can I tell if getting a PhD is a good choice for me? So I think, okay, the good news and the bad news is that I don't think that you can be pretty sure about if a PhD is a good choice. But there are some indications about if it's a good choice for you. So the number one thing is that if you want to become a professor in a university and teach or do some research or do both of them, then this is the only path right now. So this is the first thing. The other thing is that if you have some, if you start an undergrad in CS and you keep reading about, operating systems, databases, programming languages, all these fields, and you find yourself continuously asking the question, why? Why is that? How is this working? And what can we do to do it better? And what if we just completely, destroyed everything and started from scratch? Then I think this is a good indication that maybe a PhD is a good choice for you. But again, this is my personal opinion. It's, everything has a risk. So it's not that you have to be 100% sure and say that, yes, I have to do a PhD and this is the only path in my life. So there are very few people that do that. Yes, and you can just try and have these indications and try to make this step.
I would like to start I'd like to just add one more thing here. So for at least in computer science, I think one thing is really important is have some kind of tolerance to criticism. For example, if at the same time some kind of a perseverance to work on a single problems, because at the end of the day in PhD you will actually work on a broad set of I should not say just one problem, but on a broad set of similar problems. And when you come up those solutions, your advisor, your collaborators, as well as the reviewers who will review your paper will come up with a lot of criticism. So you should have tolerance towards those criticisms. So I think that is really important. And at the same time, this was also something that I actually struggled during my first 1 or 2 years, because my advisors, my collaborators, they were really criticizing some of those ideas. I propose something, they will obviously criticize something, because it is better that they criticize something before actually reviewers criticizing something. So if you have some kind of like a tolerance for those kind of criticism, I think that would be a really good sign for you to be a good PhD student.
Let me add my comment. So the best way to know if it would be a good choice or not is to actually get some research experience while you're as an undergrad. Or also, even if you have graduated before you get to PhD, you can enroll as a master's student and get some research experience while you're doing your master's program. And going through that process, working on a research problem, trying to figure out how to tackle an open-ended problem, come up with a solution, figuring out what are the pros and cons, what are the trade-offs between alternate design decisions. So once you go through that process, you will actually know if you would like research or not. Because many times in our undergraduate study, the kind of assignments or homeworks we do, they are not open-ended. There is a specific answer at the end which you're supposed to get, and if you get it, you get your grades, but the answer is already known. But PhD is all about working on problems where no one knows the answer. Like you will be the first person to get the answer. So in order to know if this is a good choice or not, I believe like working on some open-ended problem and going through that process would give you a pretty good indication.
Thank you. Do any of the other panelists have new ideas to add to these responses?
I think it's worth mentioning. This is based off of the previous responses. So I think that it's not. I think it's a great idea, and it's not obvious how to actually do this as an undergrad, or it wasn't necessarily obvious to me. And so I just wanted to put out a couple options. One is that there are kind of summer research programs. It depends on where you are. I don't know for other places, but at least in the U.S., there are often kind of summer research programs that you can look into. If you're into theory, these are sometimes called research experience for undergraduates. Anyway, you can kind of look online and find these. The other is you can cold email professors. You can walk into professors' offices. You can talk to them after a class. The professor that I ended up working with at Harvard, I literally just walked up to his office. His door was open. I walked in and I was like, hey, can I work with you on some, do you have any problems that would be appropriate for an undergrad? He said, yes, we read some papers. I wrote my thesis on it, and then I went to get a PhD. So one option is just, try to talk to professors. They're usually totally open about it. It's not weird. That's all.
Thank you.
To that point, I might add just a bit, which is say you don't have to have that undergraduate research experience to get into the PhD program. And there's actually some really nice opportunities to try a PhD program and then leave with no harm. So if you come from undergraduate, you get admitted to a PhD program, you're going to take classes while doing your research. As you're doing that, you may find that you aren't really enjoying the research and you just leave with your master's, and there's no harm to that whatsoever.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I think in the interest of time, we can check off that question, and let's actually follow up on Leo's point and talk about, should I do a master's before I get a PhD? And that goes back to Samir's point as well earlier.
I guess let me just start with that. So if someone is pretty sure that they want to get a PhD, I would say there is no point on getting a master's degree. Like just after you graduate if you graduate your undergrad, just directly get to the PhD, and on the way, most probably you'll just get a master's degree as well. But the master's degree is good if you exactly don't know what you want, or you are kind of thinking about different type of directions after your master's. Maybe you still thinking, maybe I will get back to industry. So in those cases, maybe it's a good idea. But if you're sure, I would say just go directly to PhD.
I would add something really briefly, which is to say it can be easier to get into a master's program than a PhD program. And so if you maybe were struggling a little bit during your undergrad, but now you've kind of found your purpose with computer science, and maybe your grades aren't that strong and you're worried about getting into a PhD program, that may be a place where you can go do your master's, kind of bring up your grades, get some research experience under your belt, and have a better chance of getting admitted to a PhD program.
I think it's important to let people know there are actually both research masters and professional masters. So you have to be careful here when you're getting an answer, because if you really want to pursue or considering pursuing a research PhD, a research master's will give you a taste of that without, the requirements are much smaller. And in the United States, most PhD programs are direct admit. What you will find if you're interested in programs outside of the United States, that a lot of schools require a master's degree. Like here at UBC, because we're so close to the US, we get lots of US students. There is a way to accept somebody directly into the PhD program, but you have to be a stellar candidate for them to do that. Otherwise, what they do is they offer you what we call the PhD track, where at the end of your first year, you choose whether you want to get a master's degree or you want to continue on in the PhD program. A lot of European universities, the assumption is when you're applying for a PhD, you'll already have a master's degree. Like at UBC, the only thing we really have are mostly is a research master's. And one reason I mention that is because if you're going to a professional master's program, you're going to be paying for it. If you're going into a research master's program, like here at least, it's actually funded. So that can make a difference to what you make the decision there to do as well.
So I think this might depend on where you are. But here in the US, like I was very strongly warned against getting a master's exactly for the funding reason. That often even research masters here are not funded. And so Leo brought up some good reasons where, you know, maybe you were struggling more in undergrad, but now you've kind of found your thing, and it is harder to get into a PhD program. But if you're in the position where kind of you're just not sure and you want to test it out, at least here in the US, my understanding is you should go to a PhD and then just drop. It's because you can just drop with a master's and it's funded. So there's kind of no reason to go pay for a research master's when you could just do a research master's, you know, as a PhD student and then drop out if you don't want to with a master's. So kind of watch out for this. You know, there are funded programs, there are great programs. There are also not funded ones. Be careful, I think, with the master's programs.
Yeah, so wonderful answers. I just want to add something to Max's answer, that in general, yes, you can do that. You can go to a PhD and then drop out after 2 years. The thing is that this is not always a good practice for the other side, because someone is investing in you. Okay, so your advisor and who's paying for you, they are investing in you. And it's, you know, while this is a choice, and a good advisor will always support you on doing that. Maybe it's, you know, you have to put some thought on that. This is one thing that you should definitely be careful about when you're just thinking about dropping out, because I've seen this, you know, kind of thinking that it's okay, I will apply for a PhD, and then if I don't like it, I'm gonna leave. It's not that simple. It's, you know, you have to make a good decision, and if it's not for you, it's okay. You can always drop out.
Another thing that I wanted to add here is that, like, many times we see PhD applicants who are actually from from a different background, not in computer science, not in math, or not even in electrical engineering, but they want to work in something similar to computer science, because like even though they were doing their undergrad major in some other subject, they've taken 1 or 2 courses and they really like computer science. They wanted to shift from that major to a different major, and that in that angle as well, I think masters also help, because I have seen a couple of cases where people actually did a master's in computer science and then get a really good offer from a really good PhD school. So that can also work, I think.
Great. Thank you all. All right, so I think it's time to move on to our next question. And this question is about job prospects. How does getting a PhD affect your job prospects? What kinds of jobs do PhDs get? Who wants to start?
I'll take a crack at it.
Go for it, Tony.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Leo.
Oh, I was going to say, there's obviously if you want to be a professor, you're almost certainly going to get a PhD. But I would mention one anecdote, which is that I had a good friend who had their master's and was working for a company where they got contracts from the government, and they were unable to be a principal investigator on grants without a PhD. And so they actually went back to get their PhD to do that. So there are some positions out there, like being a principal investigator on grants or leading research labs, where you do need a PhD to be able to have that position.
And I was going to actually say, to some extent, exactly what Leo is saying in a different way, and that is the value of the PhD for your job prospects depends upon what you want to do. If you want to be a researcher in academia, then it's extremely likely that you'll have to have a PhD in order to do that. Of course, on the flip side, it's extremely competitive, and even in computer science, where we have a lot more academic jobs available than in many other fields, a PhD doesn't guarantee you a job in that field. And I'm in systems, and the one benefit of being in systems, and one of the problems we have in academia, is it's really hard to get people to stay in systems in academia because industry will pay them 4 times as much money as they will make at a university. The reason that my original supervisor left is that he was literally hired away by Amazon at probably 3 to 4 times the amount of money he was making as a tenured professor. It's hard to beat that.
Let me add something. So what's the goal of PhD, right? So what do you learn? So other than going really deep to a particular open question, the goal of PhD is also learn how to communicate well and how to write well. And once you have got those 2 qualities and also some technical skills that you have gained during your PhD, that actually gives you an edge in any type of job that you get. Maybe it's on the research side of the industry, maybe it's more product side of the industry, it doesn't matter. So in order to become a leader, you actually need these 3 skills: communication, writing, presentation, and some good technical skill to prove that you're capable. So I would say that once you have a PhD, you have the skill set to become a leader. You can decide to become a leader in academia. You can decide to become a leader in the product team. You can decide to become a leader in the research side of industry. I would say a PhD just gives you with these skill set, which will improve how you would be perceived in your career. So PhD is maybe only 5-6 years. Your career would be 20-30 years. So you would require skills which will equip you to become a leader in any job that you choose. So I see that's the value of PhD.
Thank you. And I think we likely heard responses to address both this question and the question below it, which was, if I ultimately want to go to the industry, should I get a PhD? And I think we've heard some great responses there as well. So let's hear this more specific question about if a student had an opportunity to get a BS/MS before applying for a PhD program, would you recommend that, or just applying for a PhD after the BS? So a BS/MS is an extension of your undergraduate degree that extends it typically by a year or so, and would result in a master's at the end of it. So thoughts from the panel?
I can start if it's okay. So the thing is that there are a lot of bachelor's and master's combined programs. Some of them are just an additional year of studying. Some of them are 2 years. So I think that just extending your study by 1 year, it's not that much, even 2 years. But the thing is that if you go towards the end of the graduation of your bachelor's and you don't feel like you have the complete answer of what you want to do in your life, then it's a good idea to just pursue this thing and continue and doing a master's. But in general, I think that if you get some research experience during your bachelor's, then it's a good idea to just apply for a PhD. But it depends of how ready you feel about what you want to do in your life. But yeah, it's just 1 additional year, 2 additional years. It's not, I don't think that this is that much when it's going to determine the rest of your life at some point. Not entirely, but at some point.
I would like to add another thing here is that like I work with a couple of master students who are on a program like this one. So what happens is that for many undergraduate students, for the first 1 or 2 years, they are actually in a process of actually deciding which major they will take for undergrad. And for the once they decide for the next 2 undergraduate years, over the summer, maybe they went for like a industry internship. So they actually did not get the chance to actually work on an actual research project or full-time research project during their undergrad. So for them, actually, it made sense to actually when they were doing their joint undergrad as well as master's program. During that master's program, they get some research experience, and that actually helped both of them. And they are after that they applied for PhD program as well, and that actually helped their PhD application program as well. I think they also learned some valuable exercise or experience regarding research, how do research in systems area work. So I think there is value in that part as well. Like if you don't have any undergraduate research experience, maybe this master's program will actually give you that experience as well. And in many of the universities, at least in my university, in University of Michigan, for that joint master's program, most of those master's students are actually funded by some sort of like a graduate student assistantship or teaching assistantship. So that, and it's only for like a couple of semesters. So I would recommend that if you are in a situation like that, if you need some more research experience, I think BSMS would be a really good option for you.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, so there's a question here about, is it worth getting a PhD if I don't want to go into research? And we heard a little bit from Samira about the leadership qualities that we develop through the PhD. And I'm curious if other folks want to chime in as well about whether it's worth getting a PhD if a student doesn't want to go into research.
I may add just real quickly the range of jobs out there in academia. So once you finish your PhD, I'm not sure which institution you're at for the person who's asking this question, but there are research-intensive universities where faculty spend much of their time doing research and some of their time teaching. There are public undergraduate institutions where faculty spend much of their time teaching, very little of their time doing research. There are liberal arts colleges where they do both. And so even if you went into academia, you could still have much of your job be teaching if that's what you're passionate about, without having a large research component. And that's not commonly known, especially for folks outside the US.
I guess I think it's worth adding to be kind of careful on this question. There's I guess a related question, which is that I you know, as others have said, there's definitely reasons to get a PhD, and if you don't want the rest of your career to be research. But it's different from, you know, getting a PhD if you don't like research or you don't like currently want to do research. A PhD is really difficult. It's a really hard time, and if you on top of this don't like what you're doing, it can be really rough. So sure, if you like research, but you're just like, okay, maybe I don't want this to be my life, then yeah, sure, absolutely, all these other things apply. If you don't even like research and are maybe just doing it for other reasons, maybe it's possible, but I would warn you that I think it would be a really difficult time.
Great points. Thank you.
Last thing I wanted to add here is because like this is mainly holds true for students from like from underdeveloped countries, like from countries where it's very difficult for them to get a quality higher education without the funding situation, because like in most of the US universities you cannot actually get a master's without paying by yourself. So if that is your case, because like for Bangladesh, I know that very few Bangladeshi students actually come here in US with their own fund. So, and I think that is true for some other countries as well, like, because I know that for Iranian students that is also the case. So if that is the case, maybe you can consider PhD as well. Like for masters, it's usually around like 2 years if you want to do a full masters here in US, and PhD it's around like 4 to 5 years. So there is also a trade-off here. So that's another reason why you may want to go to PhD, even if you are sure that after completing your PhD, you will not go into like a research oriented jobs.
And I just want to add, so there's also the financial reason. So someone once told me that a PhD costs approximately 1 million. And if you think about it, in the US, if instead of getting a PhD, you go to industry and you count the promotions, you count the bonuses and all of these things, then yes, it costs $1 million. So if you, I don't know, the risk is losing $1 million in 6 years. So if you're not sure, on top of all the other wonderful answers, you have to think about the financial thing as well.
It definitely is worth saying, don't do a PhD if your primary emphasis is on earning as much as possible. I mean, having said that, I should note that I know people with PhDs who are billionaires now, but it doesn't have anything. Those are the outliers, and don't think that the couple of cases like that mean that you get your PhD, you're going to turn into one of the multi-billionaires. Doesn't happen that way. Very rarely.
Oh, and I just want to add that I just remembered that if you want to get a good answer, let's say, about getting a PhD and the financial outcome after years, you can just Google what Elon Musk thinks about people that are getting a PhD, because Elon Musk is a billionaire. So yeah, that's a good source, which I don't agree, but it's okay.
All right. So then I think we're seeing a lot of interest in origin stories as well. So going back to your own experiences and how did you know you wanted to pursue research? So if folks wanted to share any additional anecdotes beyond what you said in the introduction, that would be great.
I might share a story that I think is fairly true for new PhD students, and I'll see if it resonates with the folks here. Is you often get involved in a lab, and you'll often be assigned to start reading research papers. And what you'll do is you'll read research paper, and if you're starting to get into the research and you're starting to get into these ideas, you'll read the paper and you'll say, well, why did they try this? I think this could do a little bit better, right? And early on, you're going to be reading a paper from, let's say, the 1980s. You're like, why didn't they try this? And you find out they did that in 1985. But as you progress, you keep reading more and more recent papers, and then you finally get to the point where you're saying, well, why didn't they try this? And no one's tried that yet. And then you get excited about it because no one's tried this yet. It's your idea, and you can't wait to go try to solve it. And so for many students, I think it takes a little while before they actually get to that point that they have ideas that are on the cutting edge. But once you start having those, it's pretty exciting.
I thought it was probably the best way to utilize my stubbornness and my ability to fail frequently, because both of those play an important part in getting a PhD, because you're going to fail a lot, because as Leo was just pointing out, you're going to have this brilliant idea and you're going to wake up in the morning, you're going to go, this is the best idea ever. And then you're going to try it and you're going to find out it doesn't work. Or it works for you and you write it up and you pass it around and you find out that there is some paper that was published 10 years ago in some obscure location that you'd never read where they did the same thing, and you'll be like, damn it. And you're back to square one. So you have to be willing to fail repeatedly, and you have to be stubborn enough not to give up.
Great points. And I think that actually leads us really nicely to the next question, which is, how do you know if you will succeed as a PhD student?
I can start. The short answer is you don't know that. I think everyone will agree with that. So only thing that I can say is that, like, as I was saying earlier, is that, like, you need some kind of tolerance, that it is okay to fail. It is okay to have work on a problem for like almost 1 or 2 years and then have nothing to show for. So those things actually happen. But at the same time, if you have tolerance and if you are resilient towards those kind of things, at the end of the day, you will get something out of it. So I think here the success is more aligned with how much tolerance, how much reluctance you can actually show regarding that, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like perseverance and grit, these are two qualities that indicate most potential success. And other than that, I guess somewhat being comfortable working with open-ended problems, and what Tony mentioned, knowing that you will fail more often than you will succeed. These are good indication. So as a PhD student, I think it's hard to realize if you like how important these qualities are. So you may think that like smartness is the only requirement, but actually being smart is not that a requirement at all. I think perseverance and grit, those are the main two qualities that will indicate success as a PhD student. It's just working on some problem, and if you just don't give up, keep working for a couple of years, you will just get to that point where you get new ideas and you would be able to contribute. So I would say success as a PhD student, it's pretty easy if you keep working on it. But the emotional toll is pretty high because you're failing all the time. There are 2-3 years, maybe you're not getting the results that you're getting. It could be emotionally hard, but if you keep working on some problem, you will get there. I think I truly believe 100%. I believe that you will get there if you don't give up.
And I'd add that you're not alone. I mean, you certainly are trying to create your own dissertation, your own thesis, but you will have an advisor or advisors who are very invested in your success, who are going to work with you to try and make sure that you're successful. You'll have lab mates, almost certainly, who are in the same discipline, who are also looking to be successful, but they'll help you along your way. It's very much a team sport, and so this isn't all on you.
Just adding on that same point, you can even communicate with other people, not just in your university where you are pursuing your PhD. You can communicate with other professors in other department as well who work in related area or who worked in this problem maybe like 5 or 10 years ago or still working on that, and they will be able to help with you regarding that. And most of the people, there are obviously some people who may not actually even reply to your email, but they will reply to, most of the people will reply to your email. They will get the time out from their busy schedule to meet with you, and those things will help you to get to your success.
Thank you. And I'll just plus one the team sport aspect of getting a PhD. One of the things that is a hidden gem of the PhD process is the international collaborations and network of friends that you acquire by delving deeply into a research area and getting to meet all of the other people who care so passionately about solving these problems, and seeing other people succeed and being inspired by the work that they're doing and that they're collaborating with you as well.
I think that one of the hardest things for me about the pandemic has been the loss of face-to-face interaction, both at conferences as well as just going to the university and talking to people, because you can just have these like spontaneous conversations where somebody's telling you about what they're working on and it inspires you, and you just have this idea. You get one of those inspirational moments that Leo was talking about, and you go, oh, I think I could apply that to the problem I'm looking at. And it just doesn't happen now. And so that's the flip side that really tells me that this is a very social activity. If you want to be a loner, and I know a couple of people who really prefer mostly to work on their own, and I still collaborate with them, but it's they don't really talk in large group situations, you can do that. But as much as it might sound counterintuitive, everything we're talking about is how social research actually is. You know, what did Samira say? She said the most important things you get out of this are your ability to communicate. And I absolutely agree with that. You can actually be a mediocre researcher who can communicate your findings really well, and you'll get published and you'll get invited to conferences and you'll end up on PCs, and people will want to work with you because the ability to communicate is more important than your ability just to be able to do good research. There are some crazy good researchers out there who can't communicate very well at all, and their research kind of founders and dies because nobody else can use it, and we build on top of each other's work.
Thank you. All right, there's a question here about the MyCS PhD website. So thank you all for checking it out. And someone noticed that having a master's degree can lower your acceptance rate to PhD programs, and would like us to elaborate on this. So panelists, please.
I'm not sure if it's true. So when I'm taking students, I'm just mostly looking at their skills and if they have any research experience or not. So I work on hardware and systems, so having some skills on either like how to write in LLVM pass or how to hack the kernel, or maybe some skill related to FPGA. So those are the things I'm looking for. And it doesn't matter if those skills are there as an undergrad or a master's student. I will obviously always prioritize those students who have those skills.
I have to agree with Samira. I find that hard to believe. I wish I could find it, but at one point somebody tweeted about how their department measured, they went back and did retrospective measurement, which we don't do very much in CS, to determine what factor in a PhD application corresponded with success of the PhD program. And what I still remember about that is the number one factor was whether or not they had an MS coming in. And if they had an MS, they were more likely to succeed. And the number two factor was their phone number. And of course, the funny part about that is the phone number doesn't have anything to do with anybody. So why would it correspond? And that was kind of the point. It was, we really don't have a good idea on what leads people to be successful. And I don't know why having a master's degree would make you less likely to be accepted to a PhD. But I will say, if you have a master's degree and you're having a problem in the US, hey, talk to the Canadian universities. Toronto and UBC are both excellent universities. Waterloo's great too.
I'm not sure if this is true either, but I would offer a bit of conjecture, which is that, at least when I'm looking at applications, I'm very much like Samira, but if someone has a master's already and they didn't do any research work during that time, and they can't talk about skills that are research related, that's a bit of a red flag for me. And so maybe it's back to Tony's point about the professional masters. If folks had just got a PhD and they weren't, or they just got their master's and they weren't looking at research, that's going to hurt. And so I do accept undergrads who have no research experience. I'm very hesitant to accept a master's student without research experience.
I mean, I'll share my background here. I did the online program with Georgia Tech, and it is pitched as a terminal master's program. They say you're not going to get into, you don't do that because you want to do a PhD program. I was able to get into a PhD program. I actually know more than a dozen other people out of that program who have been able to get into PhD programs. I know people who did research theses as part of the online program, and the online website says you can't do this. But of course, the university rules say, as long as you can find a faculty member who will sign off on supervising your thesis, we're all for it. It's great. And I've pointed out to people that if you can go into a program that doesn't inherently support research and come out of it showing that you actually have research skills, it kind of goes the other direction. It says, hey, I really want to do research, and I know I really want to do research.
Great. So I think we have time for one more question. And I think this one ties in very nicely with our theme, which is, how do you survive the first few years of research when you know you could have just avoided all this and just joined industry? So what are words of inspiration? And these will be our closing words for the session. For those who say, yes, I think I should do a PhD, how should they hold on to that belief during their first few years?
I watched all of my friends who went into software being bored out of their goddamn minds while I was working on really interesting problems. So for me, that was enough.
I actually understand what this question actually was asking about, because I actually went through the same process as well. Because like during the first 1 or 2 years, even first 3 years, what happens is that even if you solve a problem, have a solution, do an evaluation and submit the paper, there is a high chance that this paper will get rejected. So this actually happens. So the only way there is a couple of ways I think we could actually survive those first few years. One is you can go for some industry internship and like in at least one of the summer and see do you like working in an industry setting, which is a little bit different and which is maybe somewhat less open-ended problem, as well as there needs to be a little less degree of novelty there. And if you like it, maybe industry is a good fit for you. But at the same time, you will also get to learn that when you work in the industry, you find that there are like 100 people working on the same problem, working on the same building with you. So the chances of you standing out solving this problem, I would recommend, is a little bit lower compared to when you are actually in your PhD research. So that is also another part. Like, do you want to work in part of a large group of people and maybe maybe lose your novelty or lose your individualism there, or do you want to continue doing research and have survived just 2 or 3 years, and then you will have some more success regarding that.
All right, so if I can sum up those closing words of inspiration, those first few years of research when we're figuring out what it is and working through some early frustrations, we can still allow the excitement of getting to pick our research directions, getting to stand out in our individuality and be stubborn about solving those problems and get excited about contributing to cutting edge research, allow that to sustain us and to join the community of researchers internationally who are working together to promote computer science and take it to the next level. Alrighty, so thank you all to the panelists and to the participants. I think we've run out of time at this point, but I do hope that you found the session interesting and valuable. And I'm glad that we were able to get through so many of your questions. So thank you all very much and have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mia.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Mia.